Oh my God. So excited.
Wait. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Let me invite her to
video.
I just sent you an invite. There you go.
Oh, there I am.
So excited to see you. Thank you so much for coming back on. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun last time.
Oh my God, us too. We were talking about it for like so long. All right, Envy, you got to start. Go because I'm like.
Why do I have filters? What have I done? Why do I have filters? I don't know how to use TikTok.
No, you're good. You're good. Everything looks good.
Am I just,
the only thing you can't do is don't SMOKE on live because they'll flag me.
That's right. Cool.
If you do want to, just get off the screen and then like hide it.
But I'll charge it while so I run my life with a flat phone and a flat bait.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. This gives me a great time to charge it.
Okay. Envy, you ready?
Yeah.
You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. No, I was saying, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you feeling, from everything that's happened?
You just feel like you're living in an upside down world.
Oh, is that echo, Envy?
Am I echoing? All right.
Yeah,
I'll unmute. Shall I drop and come back?
Yeah, drop and come back.
All right.
It's a bad echo. Okay. Sorry, Sal. Well, I guess I'll start. I'll ask one question while we're waiting for Envy to come up. First of all, how did you feel since the verdict came out?
So many things, because there's so many things that come at you with something like this where everyone's emotions get really high.
I don't know what's going on.
I have always
Hold on, Envy.
prepared myself for a loss for the sole reason that I was like, a judge will just we could go in there and just do an Irish jig for 3 days. And a judge will just listen. It doesn't matter what we say, because this judge will just listen to the Australian Human Rights Commission's absolute nonsense interpretation of the law. When you're coming up against that, their interpretation of the law, and it's wrong. They're completely and utterly wrong. But it has weight in federal court because they have a statutory right, or whatever it is, to intervene in cases. So they're listened to. In the High Court, it's a different situation, because you're talking about the validity of the law and how it actually works and how it's playing out. So I was just mentally and emotionally prepared that a judge would just go, no, I'll just go with whatever the AHRC says, and not engage, which is exactly what happened. He just didn't. He literally just dismissed our arguments. It's like he didn't even read them. It's really offensive.
We watched, sorry to cut you off. We watched the verdict as he was, and we were just sitting there and we were like, there's no way. As soon as he kept saying she and cis, I said we're in trouble.
Literally 20 seconds in, when he literally started his judgment with, I find the terms trans woman and cis woman useful. And I was like, oh, we lost. Because it's if you listen to a single thing we said, you shouldn't. They're not useful. But I will say to people, if you just read his judgment or just listen to his judgment, you don't understand what it is that we fought for and what our argument is, because his judgment is really bad. It's an activist judgment. He just dismissed our arguments. We have a very, very strong appeal avenue. It was always going to play out this way. So it sucks. It's horrible. there was maybe I was my dad and I especially, we would just sit there all the time going, because it's hard when you know that you're right. Yeah. And you know that you've got the winning argument. It's just someone's not going to listen to it. And so, but we would just look at all different things of possibilities of how the judge could, just be a good judge, and he wasn't.
Second, I remember the last time you came on the platform, you kind of said that you were expecting to lose, or you were hoping that you would lose, so you could be the next person, you'd be the person to take it up.
No, it's never I've been hoping to lose. Never, never, never. It's just, as I've always said, I've just always been mentally and emotionally prepared that it just, in the federal court, when it's like it's too much for one judge.
Yeah.
Because you've got to understand what has happened to Australian law, that you just go, okay, like, and that the Australian Human Rights Commission is against us because they're completely and utterly captured. So there's never any hoping to lose. It's just like finding the silver lining in the absolute nightmare of this situation, basically.
Would you say it was more of like an understanding kind of thing of like, we know you don't want to lose or hope to lose, but understanding that, yes, we are probably most likely going to lose, and then the next step would be going to the higher court?
Yeah, I mean, look, there could have been a judge who actually engaged with our arguments and listened to them and said, they're completely right, this law is not workable. Mm-hmm. That is completely plausible. It's just, and there could have been another judge within the federal court who did that. It's just not this judge. So you just have to, you know what, when you're fighting for reality, you just have to acknowledge the reality of the situation, basically, and go like, as I keep going back to, like, if I hadn't emotionally and mentally prepared myself for this reality, I think I'd be on the floor now. Like, I would just be absolutely shattered. So I just had to always get myself in the mentality of like, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Because I also knew that, say if we won at this level, and as I said, there's a possibility that we could have, it was always going to come down to the judge either engaging with our arguments or just going with whatever the Australian, nonsense the Australian Human Rights Commission says. But so we would have, just say we won, 28 days later, the other side would have lodged their appeal. It would have been the shortest victory, you know what I mean? And I also feel like I have been the respondent in this case for 2.5 years now. I've been on the receiving end of the applicant's decisions. I do feel now that, like, for the first time in such a long time, I actually get to make a choice. Like, I get to, go, okay, well, no, I'm appealing now. And so it kind of becomes my case now, in the sense it won't be Tickle v. Giggle anymore. It will be Giggle v. Tickle. So that's fun.
Well, are you confident in the Supreme Court that they would take on the argument? Because CEDAW was completely ignored.
It's important to remember this current judge is wrong. Like, he's just wrong. That's why I say, if you just read his judgment, you go, what? Like, it sounds like we said nothing. It sounds like we literally didn't do anything in court because he just dismissed everything. But he's wrong. To put it this way, this is how wrong they are. They are telling me that the provision to use Giggle, like the rule that we had in place, was that you had to look like a cis woman. That is not the rule. You just had to be female, biologically female, because that's what the ordinary meaning of female is, a biological term. So they've even gotten it wrong on what I was doing, but they've had to get it wrong to validate this ideology, because it all crumbles. As we know with gender ideology, you pull one string of it, the entire thing falls apart. And we're dealing with people who do not want it to fall apart. So we're dealing with captured ideologues in the gender cult. And so, the only way to fight against them is to go all in on showing that gender ideology for the nonsense that it is. And that's kind of what we're doing. And so it's all there. It's just, the judge just ignored it.
But do you feel confident that in the higher court that the judge won't ignore it? You reckon he or she?
Yeah, I do. Because, as I said before, when you're dealing with, it's just too much for one judge. There's two steps. We've got to go to the full bench of the federal court first. We wanted to be able to just go straight to the high court, but because we've got to stay in the federal court just for one more round, it's only one day. It's annoying. It adds more time to it. But because there's so many facts they got wrong in the case, we have to straighten that out. Like, they just got so much, the judgment got so much wrong. So, so we have to deal with that first. You're dealing with it's either 3 or 5 judges there, and then in the High Court as well, you're dealing with like 5. You're dealing with more people engaging in the issue and understanding it. It's and that it doesn't all rest on them. You know, I have this thing that I don't think that a lot of people, and especially a lot of men, side with this ideology in the sense that they think these men are women. I think that they think these men are men, and they think men can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so, but when you can spread that out a little bit amongst people, and it's not just the pressure on one person to make a decision, and also just how it works, what you're arguing by the time you get to the High Court. There's no more like he said, she said. It really is just the validity of the law and how it's working in practice. And it's literally not working. So yeah, I'm confident. It's just, it's one of my jobs that I have over the next year. God, this is just an exhausting amount of time. But one of my jobs is getting people to understand what it is that Australians are fighting, because we're not fighting, obviously in all different countries, we're all fighting against gender ideology, but how it has infiltrated institutions and law is different. And so, like in the UK, for example, they were essentially fighting to stop their laws changing. They also have gender recognition certificates. We don't have that in Australia. They are changing the sex markers on birth certificates. They took out the definition of woman in the law. So how you argue for this and what we've got to clean up, it's the legal arguments are different to the UK ones, just because when you're actually arguing the law, like our arguments that we have, like philosophically, that we are all like just engaging with in the world, they're all the same. But when it's law, it's just different. So, and like, I'm not an expert on that because I'm not a lawyer. There's a whole legal team that understands that. There's a lot of noise at the moment about all of that is frustrating.
Do you have any clue when you think you'll be in the Supreme Court with this?
So the full bench of the federal court meets 4 times a year, so it will be at the beginning of next year we will do that, and then the turnaround from that is relatively quick. So it's probably going to be, like, it could be this time next year. Let's say that. Around this time next year, yeah.
And then another question also, if, let's just say hypothetically, you take it to the Supreme Court and let's say we lose, what are you going to do with the app?
It will be registered in a different country. I'm never letting them on.
Okay.
I'm not creating.
I just wanted to
There's literally no reality where men are on this app. It just doesn't exist. No. I mean, I could go right now, theoretically, and go and launch it from a different country and it just not be available in Australia, which is really sad, I think, because it means that the Australian government has pushed out a woman-owned business out of the country.
Right.
But I can do that. But I want to fight for. I want it to. I'm Australian. I want to be able to run an app for women in my own country. Like, I don't think I should have to go anywhere else to do that. But there's literally no world that I'm running an app that says men can be women. Literally no.
So do you think if you... Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, so if we, let's say, God forbid, right, we do end up losing in the Supreme, like, in your mind, do you think that would be it? Like, women have no chance there? Because I would like to think CEDAW would launch, like, some kind of investigation or something, because I know Australia is ratified with CEDAW, so... Exactly.
Like, CEDAW does not include men as women. It just doesn't. They've very much tried. They've tried to get gender identity into CEDAW. All of the countries who are signatories have to sign.
Yeah.
And you're just not going to get 189 countries to sign on that. So that's why it's quite protected. Like, I never knew about all of this stuff, about like all of these different treaties and conventions They actually do keep everyone in line. Like it does keep the international community going and making sure that rights are protected if they're following them. But there's one, like, so they do, like, the best they've been able to do is like tinker at the edges of CEDAW. And there's one document that says that, like, to include sexual orientation and other status. And the other side, like the Australian Human Rights Commission, is literally arguing that other status is gender identity. And at the moment, the judge is accepting that. Like, that is insane. It is utterly insane. If it was gender identity, it would just say gender identity.
Yeah.
Other status, it actually, so my solicitor explained it to me. The other status, and there's, when you go further in the document, it's got to be like grounded in material reality. So for example, like the other status, it's something like if you, like a refugee or something, or like migrant workers or something like that, where it's like, that is something that is a real demographic of people. It's like anchored in reality, and then you can like, how it plays out. But gender identity isn't anchored to anything. It's not mentioned anywhere. Like it doesn't exist in this document. So they're definitely just, as we know, as it plays out in so many different ways, that there's just a lot of people who are willing to utterly humiliate themselves for this ideology. Like, I don't feel embarrassed or anything of how this has turned out. I think the other side should. I just don't know how you get up and say in public sex is changeable with a straight face. I think that is literally insane.
I wanted to say something. I saw something on Twitter that I think before, maybe it was before like the gender ideology started to like be known by you, because I'm kind of like new to it too in the last like couple of years, I would say. I saw a post on Twitter that says you aren't allowing trans men on the app. Is that true?
No. So I will say this. So I only got introduced to this ideology. I know the date. It was the 7th of February, 2020. I literally didn't know anything was going on. On February 7, 2020, I'd not tweeted before. I was like a reader of Twitter at that point. But when we woke up to the thousands of reviews and everything, and like all of these men on the app, and I was trying to work out where it came from. The first place I went to was Twitter, because that's where I used to just read the news and stuff. And my mentions were just insane. Like there were just thousands upon thousands of people there, and I regret it. I shouldn't have. I was just going, you're just in this utter panic. And I was just trying to calm it down, and with no understanding of what I was talking about. And I've tried to always think about what it even was that I was thinking about or talking about, because there was one meeting we'd had during the development of Giggle where the concept of trans had come up. And I'd heard of trans, like I'd heard of it in the context of like, it was now the LGBT. And I was like, okay, like cool. I support the LGBT. If they say there's another letter, sounds good to me. And I remember someone saying like, will trans women be included? And I was like, of course they will be. And I fought for that. And now when I've thought back on it, I'm like, what the fuck did I mean? What was I thinking? I wasn't thinking. All I can think of is that I thought that that was women who called themselves trans. And so even throughout all of 2020, when I was still just learning everything, it took me minutes to realize there was obviously an utter problem. But it took me a while to understand that it was the language was the war, and that was their weapon, that was what was being changed, and then to get comfortable in using it. And then on Twitter, still in that era, I used to use the term trans woman and trans men because that was when we would get kicked off. You couldn't say men and not women on Twitter at the time. You couldn't say that until Elon bought it. And I was so protective of Twitter, and I was so careful because it was literally the only avenue I had to defend myself, because literally no one else would talk to me. There was hardly, but Australian media did not want to hear about this issue at all. So women who call themselves trans, so females with a gender identity, have always been welcome on the app. This is part of my entire argument. If I said no, let's use Buck Angel as an example, okay? I know Buck, and Buck, for all, you can, let's call it Buck passable, to whatever extent that even means. Buck can use Giggle. The reason is it's because it's sex-based.
Yeah.
Buck is female.
Right.
Now, the thing about female-only spaces is no female is forced to use them. So females who consider themselves to be men, even though I think that they're wrong about that, they tend to just stay away. But they would be welcome. And if I said no to a female who claims to be a man, that would be gender identity discrimination.
Exactly.
That's how the law should be working, and arguably how it was intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
With, say, Tickle is male. He has a sex still. He's biologically a male. His gender identity is irrelevant to me. He can't use the app for the exact same reason every other man can't. So in that way, gender identity is utterly irrelevant to this entire issue. It's about sex. And that is literally how the Giggle side is arguing this, because it's sex-based. And under sex-based, in the Sex Discrimination Act, it is not discrimination to have a female-only space. So we have to get that back there. That's what we're fighting for. I literally, like, you know, when you're dealing with lawyers, you're giving them instructions. My instruction is you do not validate this ideology. I've spent the last 4.5 years of my life speaking out, fighting against it. I'm not walking to the federal court and being like, oh, okay, so yes, some of it's true. None of this is true.
No.
This ideology is absolute nonsense. And it's because also you've got to remember, if I go into court and argue in any way, shape, or form that some part of gender ideology and gender identity is real, I then have to argue why it is that I want to exclude this female. Because he's female on his birth certificate. My whole point is that he's not female.
Right.
Did you get a chance to watch his interview or his statement after the court? What did you think of it?
He was emotional.
Be so careful. But he can. I'm not going to tell him what he feels. He can feel however he wants. I would just say that you know, when you're the applicant in a case, no part of you're choosing for the case to happen. So, I mean, it sounded to me like someone who was speaking as if they had been the respondent in a case. Because when you're the applicant, you have choices that you could just stop it at any point. You don't have to do it, especially when there's no app currently in existence. Like, what are you filing for?
Right.
What do you want? You know, I will say that this particular person, I didn't know who this person was until I got the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint. He'd kind of come on my radar because he'd called and texted my phone once after I'd removed him from the app, but I don't remember removing him. So once we got the AHRC complaint, obviously we went and sort of did some research of who is this person, and that's when I discovered that I'd blocked him. Not only that I had blocked him, you know, usually you don't know when you blocked somebody, but he tweeted that I blocked him. That's how much he knew who I was. He literally tweeted on the 3rd of February, 2021, Sall Grover, CEO of Giggle, has blocked me. And then he went on the app. We'd had one exchange on Twitter in a reply when I was defending a different female-only space in Australia, these sort of rock pools. When I went back and looked, and he was just a random Twitter person to me, so I literally didn't know him. But he just said something about, like, you know, being a trans woman and using female-only spaces. And I said, look, like, go and live your life, but you can't. You're male. You can't be in female-only spaces. So he literally knew my position on this. So I find that to be, I mean, it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And my life has been completely turned upside down. The app isn't online. I have been dealing with Tickle v. Giggle since I was 15 weeks pregnant. My daughter turned 2 last month. By the time it's over, she'll be 3. Every part of my life is turned upside down. I'm, in some ways, it depends who you're talking to. I'm either known as a bigot or a hero. Literally just saying men and women. I've lost so many friends, but gained so many as well. I mean, this ideology is so poisonous and so horrible. It makes people so just unreasonable that my sympathy for anyone who's pushing this ideology has gone. Like, I used to, at the beginning, as we all are, we try to be kind, and you're thinking that you go through, that you're like, that there's room for everyone. And there is room for everyone in the world, in the sense that literally whatever you want to tell yourself to get out of bed in the morning, whatever you want to call yourself, I couldn't give a shit. The moment you're making other people believe it, that's when we've got a problem. And so, I think, he can go and call himself a woman if he wants, but he just doesn't have the right to make me believe it or include him in anything that's for women. And so, my sympathy is pretty limited.
Have you increased any more online harassment or bullying or anything like that since this whole thing or since the court case?
Well, just in terms of Tickle, so I've always had him blocked. He watches me from behind a sock, and he's admitted to that recently. He posts my tweets. He hasn't done it in a little while. I'm assuming someone told him to stop. But it was quite intense for a while there. He also goes after Kath Deves, my solicitor. He goes up, mocks her constantly. I can't fathom it. I disagree with his legal representatives, right? I think I think their arguments are ridiculous. I think what they're doing is nonsense. But I respect they have jobs to do. You know what I mean? It's that thing of I don't respect the premise of this, but I respect the legal process, and it is just how it is. And it would never occur to me to go and mock his legal representation. Why? Right. I think you have to go and mock people like that when you don't have the winning argument, and you have to rely on ad hominem. I don't have to rely on that. I've got the winning argument. So it's just, you just got to get it there. Yeah.
Do you think the media in Australia specifically is picking up a little bit on the case? Because I'm seeing a lot of it on Twitter, a lot more than it used to be, I feel like now.
Yeah, I think we've broken the ice in Australia. It's been breaking for a while, in little bits, but now it is. I mean, Australia is so captured. I can't even articulate to you. What we've proven is that our judicial system is also captured in terms of the federal court. Not all of it. As I said, I think that there would have been a different judge who would have gone just thrown his hands up in the air and gone, this law is not workable, if he bothered to engage with our arguments and with the issue. But this one just didn't.
Why do you think he didn't?
Because
I've got lots of theories, and so, I can't know for sure. I'm not in his brain. I'm not in his mind, so I don't know. But how I would say is this: if you think of every single person when you meet, it takes a while to really understand what's going on. I would say the moment where I was okay, kind, no more be kind in any way, was when I got the AHRC complaint. Because up until then, even I have sometimes when I do see something I wrote or said in 2020 or 2021, I'm oh, I don't agree with that, Sal, anymore. What were you on? That's crazy. Because now I'm just when you get to the point, it just takes time of researching it and seeing how it all has played out. And there's so many different parts of this. There's the women's rights part, but then there's the kids stuff. And then there's the freedom of belief and the freedom of speech. Then there's the LGBT stuff. There's so much there that, it's hard. I don't know. I've got theories as to why anyway, I can't say them, so it doesn't matter.
No.
Do you think also if another judge would have heard the case, it could have maybe been different? Do you think? Or?
Yeah, without a doubt. At the end of the day, our arguments are right. We are right. And they will, in the appeal process, there'll be so much more in that we have a new really big barrister as well, who's joined the team, which is really exciting. But as I said before as well, if we'd won this round, it would be just the shortest victory because the other side would appeal it. Right. So it would be nice to just win every single round, obviously. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to. You just have to win the one that matters. If we'd won 2 weeks ago, it would not mean that this issue was over for Australia and that was decided. The AHRC will fight this. Part of the reason why they will is because they are on record, they are involved in transing kids, getting the surgeries with kids. They are sterilizing kids. So they have to go down with this ship. And I will take them down. Actually, someone was saying the other day, they were like, if you could have any other job, what would it be? And I'm like, sex discrimination commissioner, thank you. That's what I want to do.
What do you think, as far as okay, we're going to go to the high court now. What do you think it's going to financially and emotionally cost for you?
Well, I know how much it's going to cost. It's going to cost anywhere between $500,000 and $800,000. So that's fun. Federal court cost $5. You wish you could just go straight to the high court. Even this last round, could have just gone straight there and that was it. But it's just not how the process works. So I know what the financial cost is. All to be able to say that men are not women and shouldn't be included in female spaces. Emotional cost, God. I try really, really hard to keep it outside of my house in the sense that, I don't want this to steal these years of my daughter's life. No. I don't want to look back and go, wow, I really wasn't present. So I work really hard to make sure that I'm present. When she is here with me, which is 99.9% of the time, I am focusing on her. And it's one of the things even when you're having a really hard day with it, and there's a lot of really hard days along the way, you just look at some 2-year-old who has no concept, and you can just sort of get into that space. So it's really cool. But yeah, it's hard. Sometimes I stop, I'll just be walking and I'll just stop and just go, I've literally been taken to federal court and lost by a man who claims to be a woman. How is this real?
Yeah.
And so you've got to keep yourself really, really grounded. And that's why I don't listen to a lot of the noise that's out there. Even, I don't listen to negative things that is said, but I also don't listen to many positive things either. You just sort of stay laser focused. It's I have a goal here. It is to make sure that female-only spaces and sport, by extension, can exist in Australia, that women are a sex class in law that men cannot identify into. That is my goal. I am focused on it. I'm going to achieve it. I don't actually care what anyone has to say about that. Yeah, that's what I want.
Do you feel secure in the financial aspect, as in raising the funds for the courts?
Yeah. I mean, it's literally the kindness of supporters from all over the world that did it last time. We got that bill, the federal court bill's been paid. It's so insane. It is raising more money in a year than most people earn in a year. And it's the full-time job to do it. I don't get paid for it. So it's between working with the lawyers, raising the money, getting awareness out there. It is full-time work that I'm not compensated for. But I'm I just sort of knew that when it happened. When I got the AHRC complaint, I had 2 choices. It was just give in, and that would have meant closing the app and living in a country where women have no rights.
Or it could have also meant to accept men into the app.
Exactly, but there was just no point. Even just as an app, who would use it?
Right.
Why? You may as well just stay on Twitter. There's literally no point to it if they're included on there. And so at the time, at the AHRC stage, they said, if you fight back on this, it will go to the High Court because of the legislation. Because ultimately the legislation is the problem, and each side is going to fight until the absolute end on that. is it completely plausible to get judges along the way to go, yes, this legislation doesn't work, you have to it has to be changed? Of course. Could it be the next round? Of course it could be. Like if we just say in the Federal Court of Appeal, we could win, right? We could win on every single point. Just say the other side didn't appeal to go to the High Court. They just went, you know what? Okay, we've lost. Then we've won.
Right.
But everyone that I've spoken to, like sort of the experts on this, they think it's highly unlikely that the other side would just go, oh, okay. Because, you know, we're dealing with men who claim to be women, and this whole ideology, they're so insistent of this. It's so authoritarian that they're just not going to they're not going to give up either. So just going to take...
I remember on the last time we spoke, you mentioned that if it goes to the High Court, that's where they're able to go into the law and change it. So on the hypothetical that you won this one and, you know, he said, no, I'm not going to challenge it, could there have been another case? Does that make sense?
So how it works is that, say we win in the High Court on the constitutional challenge, the High Court will then advise legislators to repeal the law. That's how it will do it. We'd still have to go and have a little bit of a push for them to do it, but the mandate would be there, and we will have won. We would have effectively rendered the amendments meaningless anyway. So in a sense, it wouldn't even matter if they took them out, because we would have won. We would have established that women are adult and female, sex has weight in the law. The amendments, you could keep them there, and they would have no work to do in law. If we win, and that could even be the same in the sense that if we win in the Federal Court of Appeal and the judges go, actually, yeah, sex is biological and has weight in the Sex Discrimination Act as intended, and you know, female in spaces aren't discrimination because before all of this ideology, our Sex Discrimination Act protected female in spaces. So we could 100% win, and it's just we've set the precedent, and then if the other side didn't appeal, the precedent is set. Do you need to appeal the amendments at that point? Yeah, you clean up legislation, like you'd still do it so that no one else had to go and have another case, but it might but it would be there. But once you get to the High Court, you are just dealing with whether they're valid and stuff like that, the verdict there would be get rid of them, which would be a win for us.
Are your lawyers doing anything different this time, or you think that they did or they thought that they did great and there's really nothing else to add to it because it's just kind of cut and dry?
I've actually been talking to them all morning. I'm talking all last night and all morning. Our argument is correct. Like my barrister's argument is right. What she's saying. There's some people who think that we should just be going and asking for an exemption, but that doesn't work for this reason that currently under law, this person is female. How do I get an exemption to exclude some females from a female-only space? On what legal grounds? That's the whole point. Also, how the Act was, the Sex Discrimination Act was that you didn't have to go and ask permission to have a female-only space. We've just got to get it back to that. You can have female-only spaces. That's why this is a fight on the basis of sex. It's not a fight on the basis of gender identity. So, yeah, you learn things and stuff like that, but we've got another barrister that's come on, who's really, really great. I don't know exactly how. I will learn exactly how when they're putting stuff together for appeals and things like that. Of do you change that, or how? What do you do? The challenge is getting them to engage with it, to listen to us, rather than the actual argument being wrong. Our argument's not wrong. But I'm sure that there will be things, I don't know, I'm sure there'll be something done different. I have no idea. I don't know how it works.
Do you think, how can I word this? Do you think that, say you take it to the High Court, you win. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's going to have any implications on them changing their sex? on their documents? Or you think they're still going to be able to change their sex and they're still going to be able to access because, I mean, wouldn't this case set a precedent going forward?
Well, we've talked about that because we're going to have a situation where new legislation is written. And then it's going to have to be, what do we do for these people who have changed their birth certificates? That's something that is so far beyond my pay grade. You know what I mean? Like that's for other people to solve. What it would mean, how it would play out in reality is to say you've got a female-only space. Some guy has changed his birth certificate to say female, comes along and says, see, but my birth certificate says female. And you go, yeah, but because of the verdict of Giggle v. Tickle, we don't actually, that is meaningless. We are on the basis of biological sex that's been protected in law. Fuck off.
There was another case in, I think, in Australia. It was a gay men have actually won the right to single-sex events, but the lesbians have not.
The case that is being referred to there, the gay man one, is from 2010.
From 2010, oh, okay, right. I saw this sign pop up and I was like, oh, so, I don't know, I was like, is there like a clear thing here that, you know, when it's men that want something, it seems to go that way?
There's been the two that I know of that are specific, that have happened in like the last 18 months, that are male specific. In South Australia, there was a barber that wanted to be just male only. And they were asking for an exemption from the South Australian Human Rights Commission. And that just, there was one article written about it and then it just completely went away. I have no idea how that, and I've tried to find out. No one knows how that went. There was also a gay male sauna, like bath place. We can imagine what goes on there. Have fun, boys, like whatever. But it was taken to the AHRC. There was a complaint made against them by a woman who claims to be a man. Now, like, seriously, why on earth should a woman who claims to be a man be in a gay male sauna? Like, this is not cool. They literally don't want you there. Just accept it. And the last I heard is that this was like it was not long after I got in mine, maybe 6 months after I got in my HRC complaint. I had heard that they were fighting back, and then eventually they decided to go to sex and gender education. I will say this, that the fight is different for gay male spaces in the sense that for the most part, females will self-exclude from there. It's a completely different issue. Female spaces need the legal provisions much more than male spaces do, because men and women are different, and the moment something is for women, there's a certain type of man who instantly wants to go in there. Whereas women, it's not even just out of respect, sometimes it's just out of fear. We won't go into those male places.
Yeah.
Another thing, when Roxanne Tickle originally filed the lawsuit, did he also say that you discriminated against him based on his appearance as well? I read something that said like you discriminated against him because of his appearance and his gender identity.
Well, yeah, their argument's always been, and this is why they've like lied about what the provisions for using Giggle were, and they've always just said that to use Giggle you had to appear like a cisgender woman. It's like, no, you just had to be female. As I said, Buck Angel can use it. Like, they're just wrong. It is so bizarre to be told something that is so wrong about something you created and then be punished for it. Yeah, they have all things. It's always their arguments have always been littered with comments about his appearance, and I'm like, I'm not making any comment about his appearance. I'm making a comment about his sex, which cannot be changed. His appearance can be changed. His sex cannot be. At one point, when he refiled, at one point, because it was always gender identity discrimination, then one time we got a submission and it was for intersex discrimination as well. They took that off really quickly. Oh, which they wouldn't have been able to do, because when he had refiled, and then they were like getting the judge to get permission for it to go ahead. Like, that's part of it as well. This has been so drawn out. This has been drawn out by an extra like 10 or to 12 months than what it normally would be, because he withdrew and then refiled and had to wait to see if the court would accept it to go ahead. In every way that he could have made this, that Tickle could have made this the longest, most painful process he has. And yeah, so there was, but if because there was a new charge on there, the judge would have thrown it out immediately. So they took that off. But also, this person, intersexes, they're just throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. Also, do you know, because I know that the Sex Discrimination Act in Australia, I think that took place, it started in 2013 where they started to include gender identity, right? It's about 10 years ago or so?
Yeah, so the Australian Sex Discrimination Act came into effect in law in 1984 because we signed CEDAW in 1983, and so we had to do something with it, and that's where they made the Sex Discrimination Act. In 2013 is when the Gillard amendments happened, and it's not like for the last 10, 11 years this act has been working well. The AHRC has intimidated every women-only thing into submission. Every single one.
Was this the first? But this was the first like actual court case, right? When it came into like excluding a male.
Yeah.
Like women complained about it, right? Like women were complaining that men were joining, and you're saying like they were like kind of silenced into submission because they were afraid they were going to be, outed or they're going to lose their business, right?
Completely. Like I know for a fact that there's a lot of like, little independent women-only gyms that, had a man come and they went, no, sorry, like a man who claimed to be a woman, they would go, no, you're not a woman, so no, you can't. You would file either in the AHRC, at the Australian Human Rights Commission, or the state human rights commissions. They would then, get this allegation of discrimination. They would be like absolutely petrified and go like, okay, you can come in.
Really?
So they've intimidated and scared everybody into submission. And I think they thought that, they would have assumed that I would have just given in too, because everyone else had.
Yeah.
My mom and dad have laughed about it quite a lot because they're just like, oh, they had no idea how stubborn you were. Like, they know. My mom and dad know how stubborn I am. I am only ever stubborn when I know I'm right about something. Mm-hmm. If I don't think I'm right, I sit it out until I can work it out. I don't really say anything, but I know I am right. And so I sleep very soundly in that. And I also know that so long as you fight back, so long as you are in it, you can win it.
Yeah.
The easiest way to let this ideology take over everything and win is to not fight back against it. Let's just say, as you keep saying, like you were saying before, like that, okay, what if we lose in the High Court? Like that is just the absolute worst case scenario. By that time, so many people will be aware that the Australian High Court said that a man is a woman and took away women's rights. Like this is what we're always saying, peak the world. You peak the world, then you get people pushing back. It becomes such a political issue. Like that is what the women in the UK did a brilliant job of. They made it a political issue. It's not like it's not left or right. It's both of them. Both sides have to actually be grounded in this complete and utter reality. So would we then, you just have to kind of push and push and push until we had the political capital to have the amendments repealed. But I don't think we're going to have that worst case scenario. But yeah, I think it's fine.
I wanted to ask, when you did the first initial testing phase and you were allowing or there was trans-identified men coming onto the app, and I know there was another tweet that you had put out and you said that you had listened to the women on the app, and obviously you don't have to if you can't, but what were the kind of things that the women were complaining about? Was these men behaving in particular ways towards them, or was it just...
Giggle has never existed allowing men who claim to be women on. Literally never. It's literally never existed. When on the 7th of February 2020, when we came under attack, before then, a handful of women in the world knew about the app. We were just doing beta testing. It was still full of bugs. The security measures weren't in yet. We were just ironing things out to do the next build to launch it. But because it came under attack, we just had to launch it. And then we did another build and blah, blah, blah. But Like it literally turned my entire life upside down. We had to go through and because the security measures weren't in place properly yet, like all those men were on the app, so we had to just go and take them off.
Right.
There's never ever been a reality where Giggle has existed where men who claim to be women have been on it, ever.
You see, oh, sorry.
And but a man would occasionally get on and like do a post or something. As soon as we were aware of it, we'd kick him off.
Right.
That's a Tickle getting on the app and then getting kicked off. It was not an event. It's just a normal day at the office. Like,
right.
Depending on how many were trying, because some days it would be thousands of men who were trying to get on, and they wouldn't. Every now and then one would slip through. Like and you just kicked him off.
Because we get a lot of, because obviously, me and Christy, we debate this on a daily, advocate, we'll get like opposition come up. So I did have one guy who came up and he was like showing me the tweets like, oh, look, Sal, she wanted them on. She wanted, because he was showing me the tweets and whatnot. And I was like, look, there's no way.
There's just also, as I said before, when you see a tweet by me, and it was written, and there's some that are written on the 7th and 8th of February 2020.
Yeah.
One, I had no idea what I was talking about. And two, I was hysterical. My mum was hysterical. We had no idea what was going on. Only thousands upon thousands of people. I wish I hadn't responded to any tweets or anything because I didn't know. I learned that lesson pretty quickly. But I said to someone the other day about it. I was like, I've never scrubbed the internet of that because I'm not ashamed of not knowing what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, I see some people saying, like, I've seen it, of people accusing me of like, I don't know, of having them on there or something. I'm like, why would I be doing this fight? Why would I go through this? It doesn't even make sense. It's stupid. It's people trying to create drama and controversy for, I don't know, their own benefit.
And I think you can change. I mean, people's perceptions or perspectives on a certain topic can change, like
where it exists. I literally didn't know that this issue existed. I was in this Trump-hating bubble on Twitter. I was so focused on that from 2015 really to 2020. My media consumption was just very Trump-esque because I was just in that group of going, how the fuck did this happen? Like, how does this guy get here? But I was only looking at it from this one perspective. Now, after, but we all have, our minds are blown after, seeing what's actually going on. I actually now have a completely different perspective. I still hate Trump, but I understand now how he got in. Like, just from no longer being in that little bubble, but being in that little bubble meant I wasn't seeing all of this other stuff that was happening.
I want to say about Trump and Kamala, unfortunately. So the problem I think we're having here, and it's going to kind of plug into like your case, is that like, so I'm a Democrat, right? I've been a Democrat my entire life, and I can't vote for Kamala because she's against my interests. And I'm pretty much, as a New Yorkers hate Donald Trump. I can't stand him. And I don't want to make this a big political thing, but I'm stuck now. Like, I'm literally stuck for the first time in my life where like I can't vote for either because like I morally can't vote for Kamala because she literally goes against everything that I believe in as a female human being. And then I just have this douche on the other side that I just don't like because he's just a douche.
I get it. I feel so sorry for, Americans in general, but especially American women right now. My best friend, who I lived with in New York, she lives in Washington State now, and she's just going, like, she's just going, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's going to be a hard situation now because I know that Kamala will continue to implement like men into law as women. Like, they'll still have them in the prisons, in the shelters. They'll have them everywhere. And I don't think that women are like a woman like you, that this case should have been handed to you. I feel like you're the perfect person to take this case all the way to the end because you're stubborn and if you know you're right, and you're just going to kick it off to the end and you're not going to stop. And even with me and Envvy, like watching the case and then like debating on the app and talking about like gender affirming care and minors, how it's like, put the kids on puberty blockers. Who cares if we do like double mastectomies and all this garbage? me and Envy stands have been like completely radicalized. Like we're like complete lunatics with this ideology now. We're like we don't even want to use like the female name anymore. Like we're trying to find like alternatives to like not call a man like Jessica, because then it makes us automatically hit she. Like, oh, she said because Jessica, and it's like, wait a minute, So now we're like stuck here too. We're like we're just done completely, like on every level.
I'm the same. I am done completely. There is not one piece of this ideology that I think is true. I know it's not true. It's beyond not even just thinking it. I know it's not true. This is a completely made up ideology that should never have infiltrated society. It is a perfect storm that it did. I agree with that. Helen Joyce explains it really well of why she thinks it happened. And it was just literally everything. The stars completely aligned in the worst possible way for it to happen. It was, LGBT groups having nothing to do anymore. It was, it just, there's so many things. And, social contagion happening, social media taking off at the same time as all of this. It's just, it should never, ever have happened. There's not one part of it that I validate. I don't even think, there's people that go, okay, what you do as an adult, that's your business, but just, stop it for the minors. No, I'm sorry. Mentally ill and vulnerable people should not be allowed to cut their dicks off.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I'm saying. A hardware fix to a software problem.
Do no harm.
Yep.
You are harming these people. You are killing them. Like, even though I don't, as I said before, I have very limited sympathy for men who claim to be women. However, they are human beings who deserve to not be experimented on.
Yep.
Like, one day maybe they will realize that we're actually out here fighting for their rights and safety as well, even though we don't like them. But
even the W-Path files, I don't know if you saw when that all came out, and how they were experimenting on people with schizophrenia and homeless people, and mutilating their bodies and then sending them back out. I've always said a hardware fix to a software problem is not the solution.
Completely.
Your thing,
The moment anyone walks into your doctor's surgery, psychology practice, whatever it is, the moment someone walks in there and says, oh, I think I'm a boy, or I think I'm a girl, and they're going the opposite sex, or I think I'm non-binary or cat gender, or any of the other nonsense things that have been made up, that person should literally go, okay, you are having a mental episode.
Yep.
Book therapy, we're going to get you grounded in reality. You can never change your sexed body. That is it. But you can literally create a personality and a life for yourself however you want. Wear whatever you want. You can, nothing is holding you back other than certain biological realities. Like, men will not get pregnant and women can't get boners. There's just
so ridiculous.
Ground people in reality. And then that's be kind. Anyone who is going on along with this ideology is cruel to evil.
Yeah.
And you also can't claim it's not a mental illness while also claiming that if they don't get their gender affirming surgery, they're going to unalive themselves. Like, it's a complete mental illness, like where they actually use the self-deletion, like the self-unaliving, taking their own life, whatever, as bait to get what they want to get. So you can't say that it's not a mental illness when, if they don't get this, they're going to unalive themselves. They're going to hurt themselves. Like, it doesn't make sense how you could separate that from this. It's a mental illness. It can't be separated. You can't have it both ways.
I completely and utterly agree with you. I mean, in Tickle v. Giggle, the applicant made statements to that effect at certain times, like in submissions, and I was like, how absolutely dare you say that not being able to use an app made you feel this way? Like, that to me is someone who needs help.
Yeah, emotional blackmail at its finest. It really is.
I'd also go on to say that there is a level of homophobia within this ideology as well, because I don't know if you know about the Tavistock in the UK.
Yeah.
It was like gay conversion, that they were basically saying, they're laughing to each other, like, oh yeah, we're going to take this gay boy and tell him he's a girl, and then we'll have no more gay people. So it's an attack on sexuality,
It is. That's why, there's so much to unpack. It takes you such a long time to go all of this is just crazy. I mean, it is so homophobic, telling lesbians they have to like dick, and telling like effeminate gay men that means that they're women.
Yeah.
Well, it's lady dick. It's lady dick. That's what they say, that you have to like lady dick, and then, you know, otherwise you're hateful. And I think from, like, at least from my standpoint and Envy's, and I'm sure yours too, like, you start to like not, and this sounds really horrible, right? But I'm going to say it anyway. You kind of like, when they're like, oh, I'm going to unalive myself, you kind of like not care. Like, and I hate to even say that out loud because it sounds really cool. Thank you. It sounds really cool that like, you kind of just like, oh, whatever. Like, you know, if it's that big of a deal and you can't handle it, like, go get yourself help, right? Go to the hospital. But you can't sit here and just make this claim like, oh, you know, you're so hateful, I'm going to unalive myself. Because after a while, you're just like, I've heard that same argument, like, well, what do you want me to do now? I'm going to go home and now I'm going to go, you know, hurt myself. Like, you can't black emotionally blackmail us.
You can't. No, you can't. I get what you're saying. I would say it's just like, if someone says it to me, or, you know, that you're having an argument, someone says that, you just got to stop it right then and there. Like that, the end of discussion. Then, if that's the way you're going to try and argue this, then no, conversation over, because that's just pure manipulation, and it has no basis in reality, none, at all. And yeah, it just goes to, if someone is, all of these claims are just proof that gender identity or how this is manifested, what all this is just mental illness.
Yeah, I'll always ask as well when we're in our like debates, and they'll be like, oh, you know, we share the same experiences, and so I'll say to them, okay, so what is it that me and Christie have in common with trans-identified men that excludes men? And they can't say anything. So it's just a few questions and their whole argument just crumbles, you know, then it resorts to the attacks. And
that's the thing though with gender ideology. Literally, you just have to scratch the surface of it and the entire thing falls apart. And that's why when, like, say, in a legal sense of how you've got to argue it, you have to go into that argument that it has no weight. Because if you validate any one part of it, the other side's going to latch onto that. Mm-hmm. Because they have to have it. Gender ideology they have to have it that it is imposed upon everybody, because it does not work if some people don't believe it, because either these men are women or they're not. Mm-hmm. And so they have to just impose it on everyone. That's why they're going after speech, you know, censorship, everything. So but all you have to do is pull a string, and you just have to ask one question. And that's how, when, say, in the Tickle v. Giggle case, where you just know that none of our arguments are engaged with. Like, for example, Colin Wright, who was an evolutionary biologist, he was one of our expert witnesses, and who explained to the judge that sex does not change. But the judge just dismissed his expert witness and said, no, sex is just a legal concept. Excuse me? No, it's not.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to piggyback what Envy said too, like when they start to come up and they're like, well, we go through life the same. I have a woman experience. And when we push the issue to ask them, like, what is it? I want to know what you go through as a man that I go through, that Envy goes through. What is it? So I think I pinpointed it down to, like, they get to use the women's bathroom, they get to be called she, her, and they get the woman's name. But I say to myself also, like, that's not a man using the women's bathroom already defies what women are, right? Because when we see a man in the bathroom, we're scared. So that's how I know that, like, when we have this conversation and they're like, well, I use the women's space. They already know that they're not supposed to be in there, but they use it anyway. Mm-hmm. Women are not sitting here, like, actively going to do things to make other women uncomfortable. We would step out of a bathroom if there was a woman in there, like, giving birth or something, or we would try to assist. We wouldn't go in there to make people uncomfortable. Like, we would leave if somebody's kid was naked or somebody was changing their kid's diaper. Like, any situation, we understand womanhood as a collective piece, where we wouldn't want to harm women, where these men just actively do it anyway, and they don't care what we say to them, like, at the end of it at all.
If these men were actually women, they would understand why we don't want them in our spaces.
Absolutely.
100%. I think as well when they, when Chrissy was just saying, oh yeah, I'll go out in society and people will call me she, her, right? And I'm like, but the difference there is when somebody calls you she, her, you get a sense of like, oh, I just got affirmed. I have never in my life gone out and been called she, her and was like, oh, I'm now affirmed as a woman. Like, you will always live your life as a man who wants to be. You will see life through the lens of a male forever.
100%. I mean, literally, my barrister in the Giggle case, in her closing submission, said all of this stuff, all of this. She also said, well, it was also part of it, like, why, like, the pronouns thing. Like, this is such a big part of this issue, because if you use these pronouns for these men, if you call a man she, you are then in the position of having to explain why that she cannot come into a female-only space. Now, how the law has been changed in Australia with these men are being classed as female, it's exactly the same thing. If you walk into that courtroom and validate gender identity in any way, shape, or form, you are then left with having to explain why those females cannot go into a female-only space. And the entire reason they cannot go in is because they're male.
Exactly.
You literally can't give an inch on this ideology. You have to just destroy the whole thing.
And I think sorry, Christy, did you want
to? No, go.
Yeah, and then you'll get some people that are like, I don't believe men can be women or women can be men, but I'll be respectful. And what I've found with that is that the more people that say they don't believe in the ideology but want to be respectful, they make it harder for women like us. Because what happens is a man gets called she, her, he gets affirmed in his delusion, right? And then when he comes across me, you, or Christy, or another woman that isn't going to do it, the level of aggression is now heightened. Like it gets worse for us. So these women or men that are claiming, hey, I'm going to call them she, her, but I don't want them to access the women's space, but I'm still going to call them that. They make it harder because they get more aggressive with us when we don't do it.
Completely agree. When people just go, oh, can't you just be kind and can't you just be respectful? Well, I'll flip it on you. Why can't you just be kind and respectful to the TERFs?
Yeah.
Never. That never happens. And I think it's like the ultimate, it's the ultimate tornado, right? Because you have these men that have been on testosterone their whole life, right there. It's in them. And then they're on estrogen. So they become aggressive and then they become territorial. Like us women, how we protect our children. So they're going into the women's space. They're claiming it as their own. They're demanding to go in it. It's just the most bizarre, the most bizarre.
We did a live as well, and I was saying how I've been diagnosed with gender truphoria. And that ruffled a few feathers. I was like, yeah, I got diagnosed because every time I had to call a man she, her, and I negate away from reality, it causes me severe mental stress and anxiety, and I need to be affirmed in reality. So now me and Christy have started that off and everyone's getting angry about it. But if you can have your
actively distressed from calling men it actually really irritates me when I hear somebody call a man she. Like I get really irritated. So there's some truth to that also. And now there's women. I don't know if you saw on Twitter. If you want to get a good laugh, I'll share it to you. There are these two women that have OF on Twitter, and they're pretending to be trans. Did you see them? Did you see them?
Yeah, I did a tweet about it.
They're bio-trans, or they're women that want to be men that want to be women, and the TRAs are absolutely losing it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's amazing.
It's so brilliant because literally, it's exactly what should happen. Mock and laugh at these people.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the assigned female at birth trans thing that went around for a while. But actually, when we had our first war meeting after the Tickle v Giggle, when my team and I got together, one of the things we actually said when we were just unpicking his judgment was it basically actually does mean that a man can go and change his birth certificate to say female and then identify as a man.
Yeah.
That's how fucked up
that's what's happening. That's happening in Spain. I don't know if you heard what's going on in Spain now. You heard that, right? So what's happening really quick, I'll just tell if the people don't know that are watching, the men are changing their gender markers to female, and they're just reaping the rewards of whatever's going on in society. So there was a man that changed his gender marker to female, and he received 23% more in his pension from his job. He also received maternity care. There was another man that changed his gender marker to female, and he used to do DV, like domestic V, on his wife. I'm trying not to use the language. And because he was a female, they don't recognize that as domestic violence anymore, so she can't put that in the complaints when she goes to file the divorce papers. So these men, and that's exactly what they did. They identify as men, but they just changed their gender marker to just reap whatever benefits that women have in society, and it's working. It's actually working in Spain.
Yeah, like literally, no part of this ideology and how it's infiltrated institutions and legislation, not one part of it improves society. Nothing. It does not help. You don't need gender identity. It shouldn't be in any law. It shouldn't be in a single law, because, as I said, human beings can believe whatever they want. They're protected by freedom of belief, and if you want to believe in gender ideology, knock yourself out. You're protected by any religious protections that you have. Like, there you go. But I think it is shameful, just as human beings, that it even let the human race let it get this far. It's so stupid.
Yeah, I agree. Envy, you got anything? I think we had a good convo. I think I have everything that I needed.
Yeah, I think so. Pretty much everything. Oh, just another question. Right. So now that you are going to go to the Supreme, if it's all right with you, I have come up with some designs for like some merch for you as well. Would it be okay if I can send it to you over Twitter, and and then I'd love to give like a percentage as like from every sale to donate to.
That is so lovely. Thank you. That is so lovely. Yeah. We had there was a woman in Australia who created merchandise last time. And that was the reason that I have to pay $10,000 to the applicant, is because I laughed in court when they made me turn to the court book to see the meme in question, and I laughed at it. And apparently that caused great offense. It was the last laugh that cost me 10 grand.
Did it really? Oh wow! I wonder, can I make meme shirts on? Well, I'll talk to Envy, but maybe I'll make some meme shirts and I'll donate the proceeds to you from the meme. Just try it. I mean, it's just fundraising. It's fundraising.
Yeah. No. So the appeal will be lodged. What's the date today? It's September something, isn't it? I have no idea. It'll be launched the 28th, because after the judgment you actually have 28 days, but the 28-day clock didn't actually start until at the end of last week, because the judge's orders came through. So it starts from now. So it'll be early October that the appeal will be lodged, and then it's it will be the early next stage will be early next year, because it's just October, November, everything closes down.
And the High Court will definitely take the case, right? There's no way the High Court won't take it, right? My barrister has always said it's novel law. And once you get into the constitutional challenge in the court, I mean, it's going to be so boring by the time it gets to the High Court. It is seriously boring, but there's definitely aspects of the case that, in terms of the constitutional challenge, that the High Court actually does want to look at. She does know that. But that's not even gender ideology at that point. That is just like different parts of Australia's constitution. It is going to be, I don't even want to go. It's going to be so boring. I don't know if I have to go to the High Court. Like, sitting in this one was boring enough. Well, it wasn't boring. You sat there, like, my dad sat with me and we had a book where we just write things down, and I will keep this book forever, because maybe I should publish it. It is literally just my dad and I going between each other going, what the fuck are they going on about? This is bullshit. That's so funny. Wait, I want to ask you one more question. When you saw Roxanne Tickle, like, for the first time face to face, like, what did you think? And it doesn't have to be like crazy. I know it's court, but like, what did you actually think?
They're the biggest hands I've ever seen.
Did you really? I can't.
That's what I thought. I'd never seen him before in person. I've never spoken to him. I don't know him. Huge hands. Just undeniably a man.
Yeah, I can imagine. But Envy, you got anything else? I think I'm done.
No, I think I'm all right.
Thank you so much. Will you come back one more time after the High Court?
Yeah, I'll come back after the federal court one, because that'll be fun. We might have a win by then.
I hope so. Let's
see.
We look forward to it. Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for coming up. Thank you.
Bye, Sal.
Thank you so much. Bye. Yo. That was
So awesome.
Yeah, W Sal in the chat. Yo, this woman, man.
Giant W Sal for coming up here. We'll get her
How
back.
grateful. Don't you feel so grateful? It's her. She ain't having a bar or any of it. None of it.
She is literally the perfect woman to do this. Like, there's nobody. I mean, if you would have got it too, it would have been pretty good too. But like,
Same as you. But you know, at least you have a woman like that. You know,
like not gonna take no BS. That's just gonna look at it and be like, absolutely not. That was amazing. She's so great.